Brand storytelling in China is less about the big idea and it's more about product performance, trend signals, and immediate relevance. And it's brought to life beyond your typical brand campaign. Rather, it lives inside apps and communities and KOL-driven rituals. Welcome to STARDOM Bitesize Insights, where we talk about brand design strategy. And today we'll be covering global versus local design for Adidas, to Summer, China's fragrance brand that is taking the global stage, and would you buy the experience of a $50 cup of coffee? Today, my guest is Brand Design Strategist based in the hip and happening Chengdu, Admira Pustika. Welcome, Admira.
Hi, Susie. Thanks for having me. And I love how you frame that because I think this reflects exactly what I've experienced in the ground the past few years. I think in China, brand storytelling is so much more fluid. It's so much more responsive. And it's shaped by what's happening in really real time, how the product performs, how the consumers are reacting, how the brands react to that, and what's trending culturally.
Well, Admira, both you and I, having come from big corporate, we have got the experience of designing for really big billion-dollar brands. And it was always global and then localization as needed. And today, the shift is really now to this hyper-localization and cultural heritage. And so one of the brands I wanted to talk about is the brand Adidas. I feel like they're doing it really, really well. They feel really global, but deeply local at the same time. And here in Cincinnati, there is a brand called Unheard Of brand that does these multiple Adidas sneaker drops that are inspired by, I would say, really deeply personal stories and cultural heritage. So, for example, we've got this grandma sneakers, and then you've got the heritage behind the Rubelin Bridge, which was the prototype for Brooklyn Bridge, by the way. On your side of the pond, Adidas's Tang jacket went totally viral globally. I'm still oohing and eyeing over it and trying to get it, and you're telling me it's already over. What's going on there?
Okay, that jacket really had a very strong moment, and you really could feel the cultural energy around it. I found it when it just dropped, right? And they dropped it like every week. There will be like different 2 or 3 different colors. But yes, now it's like off the shelf. But I think what we're seeing and what experience in China is how quickly that flow of energy just moves, right? Consumers are ready for the next thing. They're shifting their attentions to what's next. So it's not they reject it or this is passé, but it's just the appetite for novelty, for pace, and continuous excitement is just super high here. And Chengdu is considered the hip hop central in China. And along with that culture, sneaker drops, like what you mentioned, is frequently seen here. So this is probably more what we are familiar in Europe and US or other part of Asia. But there's also a strong desire for more intentional and timely expression pieces that feels fresh, feel relevant, and connected to the moment for anything, not just the jacket, not just fashion. So the challenge for brands like Adidas is not creating that one-hit wonder, but staying in the rhythm of how quickly consumer moves on and continually giving them something to engage with. So just after Chinese New Year's, when all the jackets are off the shelves, Adidas launched a pet collection of the similar design. So it builds the cultural love for the design that we call it menghua. It means like it's so cute, it melts your heart.
And I'm quite convinced that those little pet jackets are inspired by Labubu. They are too adorable for words. And I think a brand that does this will, tap into the local stories and the local pace. Really just builds, consumer engagement and loyalty.
Agree.
As we talk about brand storytelling and brands getting the story right, In the beginning of the year, I went to CES and I had this wonderful opportunity to spend an evening with investors and innovators led by Yuan. And I'm actually going to put his details in our program here. We know how hard it is to break into the Chinese market, but how hard it is for the Chinese to break into the Chinese market. The pace, the scrutiny, the competition, the disregard for IP. And what I learned is if you make it big in China, you can make it big anywhere. And I'm seeing this brand 2 Summer, which is China's fragrance brand. You don't normally associate China with, winning fragrance. And it's just capturing this core emotion and a sense of a place for this global stage. And you've been there. Tell us about it.
I feel Chinese are always a great storytellers, always. So more successful brands in China are able to weave that history right into their brand stories. So I think 2 Summer succeed in China by building a very deep, relatable brand story, and it's rooted by the cultural memories and stories and experience. So 2 Summer was founded by Shen Li, a local. She's a former fashion editor, and the brand emerged just from her experience and her realization working with Western fragrances. They're just not able to capture like the nuance of Eastern scent. So that what led her to introduce I would say the rituals of Chinese perfumery. The experience should be like a tea ceremony or a calligraphy, right? Because I think here in China, this tea and calligraphy is all part of your day to day. So what makes 2 Summer compelling is how it translates the culture into a full ecosystem, like how I think we see other brands have done it. But from choosing the historical locations, like for example in Chengdu, the store is a former Sichuan fine arts publishing house. So just going to that area, you are immersed and overwhelmed with this all cultures and like the feel that is modern and but historic, and it blends really well. Every touch point feels very intentional, is very specific. When you go into the stores, the staff will just let you explore. You can even engrave messages or your name onto the bottle that you purchase. And customers are not just buying a product, you're buying a memory. So that creates a story that feels very personal, creates very familiar.
It does have a very ownable look, tone, and feel. You can tell it's not borrowing cues from somewhere else that's highly recognizable. The in-store looks absolutely amazing. I'm obsessed with the lids of the perfume. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
I hope to come and see it one day.
Yes, come.
Lastly, a category that is really hard to win in is coffee. Coffee is definitely seen by, let's say, zillennials as your small luxuries. And I would say that coffee has probably 3 main categories if you think about coffee outside of the home. You've got your convenience brands like your Starbucks with its heyday, white status cup, and then that whole movement to local barista and, artisanal coffee. Now there's brand experiences, the Louis Vuitton cafe, and do rituals, which are very common, obviously, in Asia. But you were telling me about this coffee shop 0566, which is this Japanese rare coffee brand, but it's $50.
I love it. So 0566, I think it's a Japanese brand. They have 2 shops, one in Shanghai and in Chengdu, and how apt, because I think Shanghai has the most coffee shops in China and Chengdu has the second most coffee shops in China. And I think it reflects the culture, right? And yes, it's 250 renminbi, so that's about $50. There are some cups that it's like 400, right? So I think 0566 specialized in this artisanal coffee. where I think the whole experience of the brand is again about, to be relatable, to actually reconnect. From ordering to for you to get your cup, it takes about 20-30 minutes. I've gone like a few times, and it
Wow.
always takes 20-30 minutes. And I have not seen anyone complain about like, hello, let's get it on. But I think because when people go to this shop, they actually want to enjoy the experience. They want to enjoy their coffee. And what's more interesting is to actually enjoy the company. To again, like, put your phone down and just
Mhm.
reconnect with whoever that
Yeah.
you bring, like your partner or your friends. But then they come in hot and cold, and the staff will explain to you how the taste will be different, the smell will be different. So it's a whole experience. It's sort of almost like a wine tasting, where you get
Yes.
to appreciate like the beans, where it's from, how it smells different. And then sometimes it comes like in the form of jelly where you can try. So it's a whole experience.
Do you get to see what takes 30 minutes?
Yes, so it's more an open concept, so you get to see like their tools and or your machines. Like even like actually when you when you ask the staff about like what's good, I think you should be ready about like a 10-minute kind of like the
Oh,
storytelling about the
wow.
different beans that you want, right?
I was in South Africa 2 weeks ago, and I snapped a photograph of a whole in-store piece where all the coffee bags were white. And I was
Yeah.
like, huh? Is it disruption for disruption's sake? Like the codes and cues were so completely not coffee. And then the packaging for 0566 looks absolutely, I mean, it looks like perfume bottles. They're just really, really
Mhm.
beautiful. Lovely. As a designer, we really would look at South Korea, Japan,
Mm, mm,
China for really what's happening. And I always feel that those are places that are ahead of the curve. What would you say is working really well for brands that listeners could take away from you?
the differentiator is how well a brand can understand people and how naturally
Mhm.
it can participate in the culture. Because guys, Chinese consumers, they want to know what's the heritage behind the ingredients, the craftsmanship, like of
Mhm.
the founder. Who is this person who's delivering the brand,
Mhm.
right? And I
Mhm.
think just like the cultural symbolism of the brand. Because if the
Mhm.
brand has no story, and that means it's missing its roots, I think you start with a lack of trust with consumers.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that needs to be a strong, uh,
Yeah.
like a step in.
And that's also why the luxury brands do so well, because they've got that
Yes.
heritage that people are buying into. Admira, thank you so much for your insights.
Oh,
I've
thank you.
learned so much. I really, really appreciate it.